Tonight on the Black Channel, it's a special 10-year anniversary edition, but of course, you know how we are about holidays. We bury the man and continue the plan, but we are going to be doing a 2019 update of our historic broadcast, The 5 Steps to Nazi Germany. This is going to be something that you're going to want to hear, especially for those of you who are new here to the Black Channel. You are welcome to join us. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. The only historically black college and university of higher education left in the cosmos. Celebrating the first 10 years. This is the BlackChannel.net radio program, and I am, of course, your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all here this evening as we sit down to eat this, drink this, sleep this, think this, breathe this, feel this, live this, love this, be this, everything we are. Black first. And I'm very glad to have you all with us here this evening. Before I get started on anything else here, I'm not going to harp on this very long because there's no reason to do that, to be totally honest with you here. You all know how I feel about dates and things, and I don't slow down for that kind of stuff, to be totally honest. But technically speaking, a couple of days ago marked the 10th year that I've been doing this broadcast here. And at the beginning, it was me and Professor Black Truth, and a mission to change the national dialogue for black people. 10 years ago, Dusty was the rule. 10 years ago, Bill Clinton was an icon. 10 years ago, Barack Obama was the man. 10 years ago, black society's agenda was integration, religion, and entertainment. Today, those things have changed. Today, there is a national dialogue that sounds like us. Today, national, even white corporations have picked up our talking points and are speaking. Today, presidential candidates are having to grapple with the issues that we say. Today, you're looking back on films, programs, interviews. A national dialogue is changed. Black people by the thousands and affected in the millions in the United States and everywhere else. The national dialogue is changed. No, I haven't succeeded. Let me be very clear about that. Jason Black has not succeeded. We have succeeded. You and me and us and we. The outspoken and the silent majority. Those of you who spoke with your dollars. We have succeeded. But we're not done yet. This is not the beginning of the end. This is just the end of the beginning. We have a lot of work ahead of us. The old icons, 10 years ago, Ebony and Jet and TV One set the agenda for black society. That was where people got their talking points from. Today, all of those have been overthrown, and we are the black media. This is very important. And I want to thank all of you, because without all of you, I would just be a guy yelling into the wilderness without you. So let me be very, very clear. I keep correcting people on this every time they say that. Jason Black is just the messenger. I am the messenger of the people. I came to bring you the message from the people. It is not a message from me. I'm just the spokesperson. But I am here to bring you a message from the people, not from me. Let's be very, very clear. This message didn't come from me. This message came from the soil. This message came from the grassroots. I'm simply the tool that is used. That's all. But you all made the message. I'm just the person whom you entrusted, and I am humbled that you would do so. I'm simply the person that you entrusted to carry the message. I didn't create it. I didn't make it. You did. That's all. You did. And I want to thank you all for doing so. Very important. And thus tonight, I wanted to review something with you all. I wanted to review something here. It's actually, I intended to do this anyway. I've been asked about this. I've been asked about it, and I wanted to do this now. When I first started the Black channel, because I understood this a decade ago, and I wanted Black people to understand it. And if you'll all remember, back then, people were arguing with us. They were debating us. They were disputing us. They were insulting us. Y'all on that pro-Black stuff. That pro-Black stuff. And we were being made to feel that we were somehow out of touch with reality and that we didn't know what was really important. But at that time, I had done a program based on something I had been meaning to do since high school. Because in reality, I saw it all the way back then. The Black Channel just gave me a way to speak on it publicly, which I did. And I called it the 5 Steps to Nazi Germany. Because I analyzed it, I looked at what happened in Nazi Germany, and there are just so many parallels to Black people in it. And I saw that that was the one place I wanted to analyze most. So what I did was I went over Nazi Germany and its history. How did they get there? What were the warning signs that you were going there? And tonight I want to give you a recitation and a review of that. 10 years later here at the Black Channel, I want to give you a recitation and a review of the 5 Steps to Nazi Germany 10 years later, and you tell me what you think. You tell me if that's the direction that we're going in or not. So, the first step on the road to Nazi Germany. Step number 1. People murmur against you privately. They speak against you in their homes. They teach their children. Very, very key. They teach their children that oppressing you not only is it not a bad thing, not only is it the right thing, it's the only sensible thing that you can do. And that's all. They get together with their wives. They make sure that their wives don't want no Negroes around. And then they get together with their husbands to make sure that he's going to back the cause. They sit around the dinner table and make their jokes. And this is where they create slurs against you, racial slurs against you. That's how you end up there. When they go to their other houses for Thanksgiving, when they become quiet when you walk in the room. It's a room full of white people. Before you walked in, you heard a whole bunch of conversation. As soon as you entered the room, all of a sudden, no one's talking anymore. Everybody got quiet all of a sudden. If the conversation was innocuous and harmless, why did everybody get quiet when you entered? What is it that they were saying before you came in the room that they don't want you to hear now that you're in the room? What is it that they were so fearless and bold about saying to each other before you came in the room that they do not consider to be appropriate now that you are in the room? They threatened their daughters, warned them of the ramifications of how they will be punished if they betray their genetic allegiance. They make it clear to their friends and their co-workers what is expected of them. They come up with their pet Negro names. They come up with their code speak. This is where the code speak comes from. It doesn't come from government. Government is actually the last thing that you run into socially. But they create their code slurs, their code languages, their code ideologies. That's what they do. They get together and they come up with all those ways that they are going to penalize you. That happens at the home. That happens privately. That happens behind your back. So what you have is a dual society. A place where they've already thought of you as a non-citizen and, more importantly, as a non-person. And remember what the Bible says, that murder happens in the heart. You are a murderer the moment that you have made up your mind to kill someone. The day that you shot them or stabbed them or ran them over in the car, that was just the day you ran them over in the car. But you became a murderer when you made up your mind that you were going to kill them. Well, you become a Nazi, you become a white supremacist when you start thinking against us, when you start speaking against us. George Zimmerman, that was just the night that he walked out with a gun. Daniel Pantaleo, that was just the day that he went to Staten Island. You're a white supremacist the day that you think of it. You're the day that it crosses your mind. So the first step that created the genesis of Nazi Germany was murmuring against people. And I'll go into more detail in exactly from World War I to World War II. But when they begin murmuring against you, the society has turned against you, but they don't feel bold enough yet to make that happen. Then somewhere along the line, something happens. Somewhere along the line, something changes, an event occurs, and it is no longer good enough to simply speak against you privately. Because you see, you are a problem. And the problem ain't gonna get dealt with by speaking against it in hushed tones and hiding your language. So we move on to the second step on the road to Nazi Germany. The people are now speaking against you publicly. They're now speaking against you publicly. Before, they were using their code words, their racial slurs, the ideologies and rationales that they were speaking to their wives and their children and their coworkers and their friends at the Thanksgiving dinner, at the office party when you weren't there, at their churches. The things that they were saying behind your back. The things that they were saying when you weren't looking. Now they've stepped it up to the next level. You see, when you murmur behind people's backs, then what happens is that means you're afraid. You cannot claim to be supreme and simultaneously be afraid. Being supreme and fear cannot coexist. So it is going to be imperative on you and incumbent upon you that you can't skulk around like a coward. If you are afraid of what black people think, then by definition, you are acknowledging that they are supreme. If you are afraid of black society, then you're acknowledging that they're supreme over you, and that cannot be allowed to occur. So for a little while, the purpose of murmuring is so everybody can get on code before they leave the home. It's like a taste testing. Make sure everybody likes it before you take it out into the marketplace. Step 2 is when you take it out into the marketplace. Step 2 is when individuals, the things they used to say against you privately, they are now saying against you publicly because they wish to change the overall environment into one that's hostile against you. You see, step 1, their homes, just their house by itself is hostile to you. But step 2 is where we make the entire society, the entire nation is now going to be enemy territory. It's now going to be hostile toward you. The entire society now. The racial slurs, the code language, the OK symbol, Pepe the Frog, the alt-right. All these code words and code language for you. All these things are now moving into the open where you can see them. Now, because you live in a nation that says that people have the right to say what they want to, even if it is uncivil, they're now moving to exercise their power and encroach on your territory. Is what they're trying to do now. They're trying to encroach on your territory. They're moving in on what you've got. And they're trying to normalize the environment to speak against, to act against you. But the overall society has got to be out in the open now. These things that were said behind closed doors, it's now got to be said publicly. So that the average citizen is in an environment where it is now openly accepted to speak against you. You've done nothing to anyone, but we have a goal in mind, and speaking against you openly is the first manifestation that the environment itself has become hostile to you. After that, we then get to step number 3. Step number 3 on the road to Nazi Germany. The media now speaks against you. Now, let's just be very clear what, quote, the media is. The media is simply the National Communication Forum. You have a national forum of communication that by government charter, and all nations work this way, the national media is supposed to serve the interests of the people. That's what the national media is supposed to do. So when you have this entity that is supposed to serve the interests of the people, and then this entity tells you that black people are the problem, now you are making it the national discussion. It started in people's homes, only spoken among 1 or 2 people, and like a virus, it spread into the greater society. Now it's gone from home to home, block to block, across the nation from word of mouth. Now the national media, which is regulated by the government, so it's a quasi-government entity, now it is picking up the vocabulary and is picking up the hostility toward you of the dominant society that once was murmuring against you, and now they are publicly speaking against you, and now the media is publicly speaking against you. So you end up with things like when you turn on the evening news, and the first thing they do is show you a bunch of black folk getting arrested for selling drugs. You turn on the news, and when you're watching sports, they're demonizing black athletes. Then they show you the hockey scores with white men beating the hell out of each other and telling you that there was some excitement on the ice today. But if black men push each other at an NBA or NFL game, all of a sudden, well, that's the end of the world if you do it. They tell you that rap music is thug music and so on and so forth. Eminem shows up. Here comes the Grammys. Everything that you were doing all this time that they told you was wrong. Black females have bastard kids. This is what's wrong. There's a problem in black society. A vice presidential candidate, her daughter, a white vice presidential candidate, looking at you, Sarah Palin. Her daughter comes up with a bastard kid. And all of a sudden, no less than Bill O'Reilly and the rest of the right-wingers are telling you why that's okay. Remember that dual system, that dual society that they established in step number 1 of murmuring against you, saying that you're subhuman, talking against you then, establishing their white privilege at step number 1. Then they began enacting it at step number 2. Now the national media, the national communication apparatus is now repeating that, is executing it with visual aids, in unspoken words, in indirect terms. They begin initiating the propaganda. They begin initiating propaganda against you. So now they come up with TV shows like Cops. They give you visual media where nobody calls you nigger, nobody calls you a slur. They just show you the demonization. And everything that you try to do, they immediately jump on it and tell you that it's wrong. Their newscasters, their movies. The black folk are always killed in the movies. The black person, if it's an ensemble cast, if the star is white, if you black, you gonna die. That's what you're there for. The noble Negro sacrifice. Yeah, the first 48, we can keep going. But they show image after image, story after story, investigation after investigation, program after program that does nothing but reinforces the idea that black people are bad, things become bad when black people come around, and thus anything bad that happens to black people is for the society's greater benefit, even if that black person has done nothing. Because you see, your very existence is the offense. Your very existence is the problem. And all of these other things are simply propped up to help facilitate getting to the fifth step on the road to Nazi Germany. So we began at step 1, where the people murmur against you in private, to their families, to their friends, to their neighbors, but they make sure you don't hear it, because if you heard them murmuring against you, that's blown their cover and you might take preemptive action. Step number 2, once everybody in the home is on code, we take this out into the greater society and we speak against you publicly. The home is on code. Now the society is getting on code. Step number 3, the national media, the national official quasi-governmental communication apparatus picks up this practice. And so now the media, which is available to all people, is making it clear to demonize black people. And that brings us to the 4th step on the road to Nazi Germany. Now, the politicians, the political structure has now stepped in and is now making legislation, making laws against you. You see, on steps 1, 2, and 3, nobody was allowed to physically do anything to you. It was still illegal to do anything to you on steps 1, 2, and 3. It was technically illegal to do anything to you on steps 1, 2, and 3. But once the society has solidified around steps 1, 2, and 3, now we move on to step 4. You see, the political apparatus has begun to change. Now they're going to put people in public office for the purposes of making laws so that they can physically do things to you. Now they're going to make it easier to physically do something to you. Here we go with the poll tax. Here we go with the war on drugs. Here we go with civil asset forfeiture, where you can be accused of a crime and they take what you have before you've ever even gone to court. Here you go with your laws for dress codes. All of a sudden, the way you dress becomes criminalized. Where you live becomes criminalized. Your practices become criminalized. All of a sudden, being in a gang injunctions, draconian gang injunctions. You've had gangs in America since the beginning of America, but it's only when black gangs rose to prominence that all of a sudden we gotta have national laws targeting you. All of a sudden we gotta do that. When they start looking at you to see how can we make your existence illegal. The way you wear your hair, it becomes legal to discriminate against you and prevent you from having a job. That becomes legal. If you get a felony, first we set you up to get the felony, then we tell you, okay, now we got you behind the 8 ball. We can deprive you of your rights. This is what happens when they get started. Then you move on and you've got these Blue Lives Matter laws where they make it legal for the police to murder you. And you're supposed to just sit back and let yourself get killed. You start having these white privilege laws and these white privilege regulations. You get the Highway Act, which bulldozes entire black neighborhoods. They steer the freeways straight through the black neighborhoods. Oh, well, gotta put a freeway here. There's plenty of white houses over there. Yeah, but we're getting yours. They start making these laws for them to search your car and search your property, assaulting your children. So you have a situation where black people are only 13% of the population, and even though blacks and whites use drugs in equal proportions, 13% of the population ends up being 60 and 70% of the arrests. Any of this sound familiar? Stand your ground. Stop and frisk. All of these things. Toxic masculinity, Me Too. Remember, they went back. Michael Jackson is the reason that they went and changed the law in California after Michael Jackson was able to get around those bogus child molestation charges. He was found not guilty in court. They went in California and changed the law so you can compel minors to get on the stand. Bill Cosby. They've gone back now and retroactively changed the statute of limitations. So black folk getting murdered and killed, prosecuting attorneys wrongfully incarcerating black people, that nobody went back and changed the laws because of that. But Bill Cosby, one black person, the media, to take a look at how the steps went there. Step 1, step 2, step 3. The media finds a target, creates a big black boogeyman out of somebody who ain't been relevant in forever. Shades of O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was not the greatest athlete of all time. He was almost one of the greats when you get about it. But in the 90s, he was the guy from the damn Smoking Gun movies. He was the fella hopping over the Hertz barriers at the airport. O.J. Simpson was not this major sports figure in the 90s, but you turned on your television and all of a sudden they created a media story. And for those of you who study journalism, you know that they have two things they teach you in journalism school. There are news stories, and then there are media stories. A news story is something that comes from the people. A media story is something that comes from the media. And the media latched on to O.J. Simpson, and all of a sudden he went from being this obscure something of an NFL athlete to being one of the greatest. No, not one of the greatest. O.J. Simpson overnight became the most important football player in history. Overnight, he became the most important NFL athlete in history. Overnight. They didn't give him the low-key treatment. A guy who had been nowhere, all of a sudden, he becomes the most important athlete ever? How the hell does that happen? How does that happen? It happens because the media was on code. They saw an opportunity and they took advantage of it. They called that the trial of the century. Before the trial was even over, they were calling it the trial of the century as it was happening. They didn't call Charles Manson the trial of the century. They didn't call that the trial of him, and his followers were not called the trial of the century. How in the world? When Timothy McVeigh in Oklahoma City, when he went to court, they didn't call that the trial of the century. He killed over 100 people. And they didn't let cameras in the court. He killed over 100 people. He killed 169 people. The media never referred to that as the trial of the century. O.J. Simpson, accused of killing 2 people, was a washed-up NFL athlete, and that was the trial of the century. A white man kills 169 people. There ain't no trial, no century. What trial of what century? Remember, shortly after that, but that wasn't the trial of the century. Just O.J. The media, the white supremacists in the media at the LA Times, New York Times, CNN, and all the rest of them, they understood that this was their opportunity. You grab a black boogeyman, you blow him up, you put it in the national consciousness, you use your advertiser dollars to make this public enemy number one, and then come the laws. Once we demonize you in the minds of the people, then come the laws. And now you saw it happen again with Bill Cosby, a washed-up comedian who was using his notoriety decades before. Now, in black society, they tell you these are cold cases. There's not enough evidence to get anything done. In Bill Cosby's case with Andrea Constand, I believe, that case, the prosecution declined to take up the case previously for lack of evidence. Now, when you're black and you get killed by the police, they tell you that is the end. If the prosecuting attorney refuses to investigate the case or prosecute the case, then that's it. You've hit a dead end. You've hit a brick wall. There's nothing you can do. White society in one calendar year voted out the previous prosecuting attorney and voted in a new one, a new district attorney whose sole platform is elect me. I'm going to go after Bill Cosby. Oh yeah, I need y'all to give me the ability to go after him here. Next thing you know, California and other states, they want to get rid of the statute of limitations on sexual assault or sexual misconduct. Now they've expanded the definition of sexual assault to include simply touching a white woman. You see, with Emmett Till, they at least pretended that that wasn't racially motivated, that it wasn't about you can't look at a white woman. Now they're putting black men in jail for kissing a white girl. They used to tell you that it had to be non-consensual. Now they're telling you that consensual sex with a white woman can be invalidated in court. They're telling you that you can have consensual sex with a white woman, but by the time we get to court, we can actually rule that consensual sex was not consensual sex. There was a juror, remember they had a juror who said, "Can we just find him guilty and go home?" Remember that? They left him on the jury. Am I making that up? Am I making that up? They left him on the jury. So OJ was the trial of the century. Bill Cosby was the second trial of the century. Bill Cosby, who hadn't been on television in decades, but the national media saw another outlet. We can use this to make new laws, like we did with Michael Jackson. Now we got another opening that we're gonna make the definition of sexual assault as broad and ambiguous so that it basically applies to any situation we want it to. Now they are making it the law of the land. It is now the written law, because before now it was the unwritten law. Now they're making it the written official law of the land that you cannot look at a white woman. That looking at a white woman constitutes sexual assault. They're now making it the literal written law of the land. The legal written law of the land. Now, you thought it was bad with Jim Crow. We're backsliding. We've officially backslid into the Jim Crow laws again. This Me Too stuff is the Mann Act again. It's the Mann Act on steroids with jaws and teeth. So the politicians, with the help of the media, all of a sudden they end up with the ability to get the rest of the society on code with going after you. And now you've got physical laws in place for the purposes of doing so. But wait. You saw the first step. First they murmur against you. You saw the second step. Now they speak against you in public. You saw the third step. The media demonizes you. Now you've moved on to the fourth step. The politicians have now made laws targeting you. Remember, you got all these other things in effect and working at the same time. They are still murmuring against you, but now they're murmuring and speaking against you publicly, and the media is demonizing you, and the politicians are making laws against you. All of this is creating a maelstrom, a superstorm that culminates in the fifth step on the road to Nazi Germany. Now, they begin taking vigilante as well as government-sanctioned acts of violence against you, targeting you on the basis of your race at both the local and the national level. All of that murmuring that they were doing, the intent behind the murmuring, the motive behind the murmuring was all to take us on this journey to the fifth step. The murmuring is meant to culminate in murder. So now you have a situation where police officers flashing the OK symbol, young white supremacists, and every damn thing else. Now they've got white supremacists out here claiming that they were mentally incompetent. The fellow who shot up the Krogers in Kentucky was saying that. They're letting that be a legal defense now. Didn't work for Muhammad Noor. Now he doesn't get to claim that his life was in danger. So whether you are outside of the system or whether you are an agent of the system, you get targeted. It is now that you as a black person, it is now illegal. Not only can you be targeted by white society, but now it is illegal for a black person to defend themselves against an act of violence perpetrated by a white person. It's illegal to do so because they're a police officer, because they were afraid, because they said they saw you with a weapon. So it's not just government agents or operatives of the government. It's not just police. They have now given the green light to the society at large. They have signaled to the society at large that we're at war and that it is now open season on black people everywhere. It's open season, and because of what happened in steps number 1 and 2, you got to step 4, which leads you to step 5. And that's where you end up at. That's where you end up at, and here we are. Over 6 years after George Zimmerman, when I sat here behind this microphone, the very night that it was happening, and I told people that if you thought he was going to be convicted, you have not been paying attention to the last 500 years of American history. When I sat behind this microphone and I told, for months on end, I was a steady drumbeat that Donald Trump was going to be elected president of the United States. When everybody else was saying it would not happen, I know my history, I know this country, and I know the people in it, both white and non-white. And after Zimmerman, that was a game changer in a lot of ways. The acquittal of Zimmerman was a game changer because it put black society on notice that your children are not safe, that they are going to target your children, and there is a systemic apparatus that is in place that will co-sign and rubber stamp the murder of your children. And then they kept going. Ayanna Jones, Tamir Rice, they kept going. And they're going to continue going. And as the population numbers of the dominant society decrease, they are going to insist on bringing in illegal aliens for the purposes of simultaneously physically displacing us as well as socially and politically displacing us. In New York City, for example, Mayor de Blasio is making it where illegals can get health care. Now, they didn't do it for black folk, but illegals can get health care in New York. Illegals are able to drive in California, and the police have told the police officers that you can't impound the car of an illegal because that would be a hardship. Now, if a black person doesn't have insurance, well, you can impound their car. No, seriously, that's the way that the police are executing it. It's not the written law, but that's what the police are doing. Oh, it'd be too much of a hardship to take a car from an illegal alien. They need it for their jobs. Okay, what about black folk who live there? Oh, well, it ain't that important for you. It sounds like a comedy skit until you realize, wait a minute, no, they're really doing this. They're really doing this. They really are targeting us. They really are instituting two systems here. The purpose of illegals is, if you think back to the founding of the country and the Land Act, and when they were giving land to Europeans who came here. If you'll remember, they made it as easy as possible for Europeans to come to this country. They made it easy. They gave them land. They gave them education. They gave them a head start and a leg up. Now, at the exact same time, they were stopping black people and penalizing black people. Now, the dominant society today doesn't have the population numbers to maintain that politically, so they're bolstering those population numbers by bringing in non-white citizens who harbor white supremacist tendencies and are openly hostile to black people. In effect, they are honorary white people. In effect, they're honorary white people and honorary white supremacists. They help to further the goals of white supremacy. But it would be a lot easier if they had some help. So get that healthcare issue off of them. Make sure they got jobs. Make sure they can drive legally on the streets. We have to remove, while they are, notice what they have a history of putting up impediments for us. You want to talk about this minority coalition? Brothers and sisters, when have they ever said that you need to leave black people alone so they can get to work? They put up obstacles for us. The Supreme Court ratifies and approves obstacles for us. They take your cars. I mean, understand this. So the same country and the same state that says that illegals can drive and the police shouldn't mess with them even if they don't have insurance. This is the same country that was impounding the cars of black people if they were accused, not proven, not convicted, simply accused of selling drugs. So for black people, they made laws that said take their cars, create a hardship. But for illegals, oh, they need to be protected from the police and protected from hardship. And nobody is suggesting that you make a similar law to protect black people. Now, these are real world examples I'm giving you. This is not hyperbolic. These are real world examples where they're saying everybody else is welcome, everybody else is safe, except with the exception of black people. We are removing barriers for non-citizens. They don't have to have a birth certificate. They don't have to have a social security number. We're going to give them health care. We're going to give them the ability to drive on the roads. Now, black folk, you get driving while black. There is no driving while brown. There damn sure isn't a driving while Asian. If you're black, you get driving while black. There is nobody trying to protect your ability to operate a motor vehicle as a black person. So you can drive illegal, and we get arrested for driving while black or shot for driving while black. It sounds ludicrous until you realize, wait a minute, this is real. This is real. This is really happening. They're really literally doing this. And then you hear about the Mexican gangs in California clearing out areas where black people are. Then you hear about the South American gangs clearing out areas where black people are in California and in Texas. Oh, I'm sorry. We're supposed to pretend like we don't know about that. Okay. Fine. I'll pretend that we don't know. I'll pretend that we don't know. On the 5 steps to Nazi Germany, as black people, we have attempted to pretend, and I say this, if you'll remember, one of the things that I'm proud of about the Black Channel is that we are a place that I promised you a decade ago that we would turn sacred cows into hamburger, and we have succeeded at doing that. We turn sacred cows into hamburger. And I have told you as young black people that you cannot trust your elders. You cannot trust the clergy. You cannot trust your school teachers. You can't trust your parents because they sold you out. They sold you out, and they have done nothing to reverse the problem. They have done nothing to help fix it. Now here you are having to deal with the 5th step to Nazi Germany. And I want to say right now, officially tonight, as black people, we are I said years ago that we were at the 4th step to Nazi Germany. I am updating it tonight to make it stated fully and declared to everybody, openly declared, brothers and sisters, we are at the 5th step to Nazi Germany. It is now legal in the United States to murder black people with impunity. There is no help. There is no safety. There is no shelter. You can't coon and buffoon your way out of it. We're all we got. And there's nothing else left behind it. Integration is a failure. Integration was a lie and a failure. And it was instituted for the purposes of keeping black people distracted and keeping black people not seeing, keeping black people chasing after phantoms, keeping black people distracted and occupied rather than dealing with the real issues. And they saw us coming, and as a people, the children have been left defenseless as a people. The children have been left defenseless. And that's the issue. That's the issue. As a people, we have not taken this seriously. Your parents did not take this seriously. They didn't accept it. And as a people, I am trying to say to you here now, as a people now, I want to say to you, especially to the young people, those of you under the age of 40 in your 30s and 20s, let's be very, very clear about this. Your parents lied to you. Your parents lied to you, and they have left you defenseless in the mouth of this machine. They left you defenseless in the mouth of this machine. As a people, I'm watching young black people who have been taught more about operating a cell phone than they have about white supremacy. Do you understand that? Show me where this generation is prepared to lead against this new system. Well, I shouldn't say new system, but against these circumstances. Where are they prepared to do so? Where is the previous generation prepared them for that? They have to come to the black channel because their parents didn't teach them any of these things. Their parents didn't teach them any of these things at all. And the first time that they heard that there was white supremacy and what to do about it because bad things were happening to them. And when if a black person did something to them, well, you went into plantation mode and you were able to get your back up and start violently protesting that. White supremacy, I ain't really got nothing for you there. Don't really have anything for you where that's concerned. But where other black people are the issue, all of a sudden you are the most militant thing in the world. All of a sudden. And that's why we have the Black Channel today, for the purposes of changing that. When I first started the Black Channel, it was taboo and it was forbidden. It was taboo and it was forbidden to say the things that I'm saying. It was taboo and forbidden to demand results from the previous generation. It was taboo and forbidden for us to sit here and say that integration is a failure. It was taboo and forbidden to acknowledge that not nearly enough had been done before now, and that the previous generation had walked off the field before the game was even halfway done. That was what they did. But there is a silver lining here, believe it or not. You see, it's been a painful thing. It's been a difficult thing to witness. It's been a hard thing to watch. But the young people are tired of being the sacrificial lambs to the cowardice and the greed of the olders, because we truly cannot call them elders. But the young people today are unwilling to continue being the sacrificial lambs to the cowardice of the olders. That's an important thing for us to have here. I created the Black Channel because I wanted to change that. I created the Black Channel because I wanted us to start having a counter discussion to that. I created the Black Channel because I wanted people to hear that what they knew and their daily experiences, you weren't crazy, you weren't out of your mind, You were betrayed by your parents. You were betrayed by the old folk. You were betrayed by the society. You are not crazy. It is not all in your head. When you got cut off in traffic the other week, that was an act of anti-black aggression. When your teacher is sitting there talking to you crazy in class, that is an act of anti-black aggression. When you were denied for that loan or failed on that test, that was an act of anti-black aggression. When they tell you to pay those fines without any evidence, that is an act of anti-black aggression. As a people, I want you to understand that. Now, there is a clip from Bill Curtis talking about the Night of Broken Glass, and it speaks on the history of the Night of Broken Glass. And I want to play that for you now because I want you to hear what happened during that event. I want you to hear what they said occurred and ask yourselves, does this sound in any way familiar to anything you've heard?
When Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany in 1933, he quickly began enacting anti-Jewish laws. He had long blamed the Jews for Germany's defeat in World War I and the subsequent years of hardship. To Hitler, they were the enemy that threatened his dream of supreme German nationalism. By 1935, Jews were stripped of German citizenship, refused education. Their businesses were openly boycotted by the Nazi Party.
Now, did you hear that part that he just said there? I want to replay that for you really briefly here. Did you hear this part?
By 1935, Jews were stripped of German citizenship, refused education. Their businesses were openly boycotted by the Nazi Party.
Well, that sounds like the reverse, doesn't it? Jews were stripped of their German citizenship, denied education. What do they do to young black children? The schools, you're paying your tax dollars into the schools, and they deny your children education. As black people, we have been de facto stripped of our citizenship. Tell me where the courts of America uphold our rights as U.S. citizens. Tell me where the courts of America are upholding our rights as U.S. citizens. They tell you that if a white cop shoots a black person, then no crime was committed. And if a black cop shoots a white person, then it is always a crime. We have been stripped of our rights as American citizens. They've gutted the Voting Rights Act. They've allowed the police to run rampage. And they have made it the law of the land. It is now legal to do these things to black people. Legal. And we have been stripped of our rights as American citizens. We've been stripped of our rights. This is what happened to the Jews back in the 1930s. And look at what they're saying here. So they're boycotting Jewish businesses. They're boycotting Jewish businesses. If that sounds familiar to you, the Black Wall Streets. The Black Wall Streets, what did they do? They targeted Jewish businesses. What did they do to black people? Target black businesses. And that still goes on to this day. If you're a black person trying to start a business, they understand, oh, you're trying to bolster yourself against our crooked economy. Oh, okay, we can't have that. We can't have that. So they go after your ability to acquire capital and resources. You see, they've got this down to an art everywhere that they go. So they are giving illegals in America, they're giving illegals superior rights to black people. They're giving illegals superior protections to black people. There's supposed to be value in being a citizen, and yet as black people, there is no value to being a citizen. You can pay taxes, but there is no value and there is no protection in being a citizen in the United States. We have been stripped of our citizenship. We've been stripped of our rights. And now we are legal aliens. I introduced that term over a decade ago. That black people are not American citizens. We are legal aliens. We are not illegal aliens. We are legal aliens. Because they have now elevated the illegal aliens above us. They have put the illegal aliens higher than us. The illegal aliens have rights. I mean rights, not privileges. They have rights. The illegal aliens have superior rights to black people. They've literally said in California, you can't pull over illegal aliens, and they're doing it in other places. They're doing it in other places in the South. You ought to see what's happening in Arkansas and the Carolinas. They got whole sanctuary cities out there in the Carolinas. For those of you who haven't been through there anytime recently, they got the big buses with the illegals going through there in the Carolinas, where Dylan Roof was shooting at black folk, and meanwhile the Mexicans are all over the place. In Atlanta, Georgia, they got their own damn mall. So they're telling black folk you can't open a business, and meanwhile illegals who are not even supposed to be on the soil, they're protecting their right to be there. Oh yeah, but only where black people live. Now they are not allowing the illegals to come where the white folk are. They're telling the illegals you can go where black people are. You can go to the black schools. You can go to the black schools. You can move into the black neighborhoods. You can go there. But you can't come where the white folk are. You can come here, but you can't come where we are. We want you to go where black folk are because the goal and the strategy is for you to displace black people. It's the opposite. It's the reverse of what Nazi Germany did and is the same thing. It is the reverse and simultaneously the same thing. They persecuted Jews by stripping them of their citizenship, by denying them the right to education. And with black people, they've stripped us of our citizenship, denied us the right to education, and moved in a new group of people to supplant us to bolster their system.
Storefronts, branded with the Star of David to prevent patronage. They were effectively outcast. Hundreds of thousands fled.
The plight of Jewish children driven from Germany has stirred the sympathy and conscience of the rest of the world.
Now, they were spray painting Juden, which means Jews, and painting the Star of David on their businesses. Black Wall Street, anybody? Directly targeting the businesses, directly targeting your ability to economically sustain yourself. I have taught you all for over a decade now that the root of white supremacy's power is its economy, its ability to galvanize and utilize resources. This is a methodology that they use everywhere. When they go and invade a country, they bring in a McDonald's and a KFC. You don't need your own restaurants. You don't need your own businesses. We're here to drop bombs on your restaurants and your businesses, and we will put our own, and now we control the economy. Now we control the economy. And if you have any, we're going to try to destroy those first. We're going to go after that first. Because once you're economically helpless, you will be physically helpless.
To prevent patronage, they were effectively outcast. Hundreds of thousands fled.
The plight of Jewish children driven from Germany has stirred the sympathy and conscience of the rest of the world. Here is the first group arriving at Harwich.
But soon, the prospects for refuge would wither. Surrounding countries, worried about an overflow of immigration, tightened their borders. A dilemma Hitler counteracted by forcibly expelling foreign-born Jews.
Now, do you all realize that everybody is tightening their borders today against black people? Now, nobody is tightening their borders against Latinos, people of Spanish descent. It's only when melanated people show up. You come in from Haiti or Africa or whatever, you get bounced back. They're coming to arrest you. You can get deported. People of direct African descent, you can get deported. But not these other people. Not these other people. So what he's saying here is they have these selective immigration rules. You're on the outside, and all of a sudden people start tightening up their rules and keeping you out. And now we see that here in America. They're tightening up the immigration laws, but targeting black people for removal.
In October 1938, thousands of Polish-born Jews were arrested and deported from Germany. Among them were the parents of Herschel Goischepan. The 17-year-old was living in Paris at the time, and upon hearing about the treatment of his mother and father, he plotted revenge. On November 7th, 1938, he walked into the office of Ernst von Roth, a Nazi German diplomat, and shot him twice in the stomach. Roth died 2 days later, and when word reached Berlin, leaders in the Nazi Party saw an opportunity to strike.
Sound like Bill Cosby, anybody? Sound like O.J. Simpson, anybody? Sound like Michael Jackson, anybody? So a young Jewish fellow who was upset about the way his parents had been treated, he was going to go kill a Nazi official. In reality, he actually killed the official's secretary. He was looking for the ambassador. He killed the secretary. But that was all it took. He didn't kill 1,000 people. He only killed one. He only killed one. And they saw that as an opportunity. Now, you've been killing Jews all over the country, but one of you gets killed and all of a sudden everything grinds to a halt. So after he killed this secretary of an ambassador, the Nazi Party saw an opportunity, like after Michael Jackson, like the Me Too movement, like the so-called war on drugs, like Willie Horton. Remember, there weren't any gang injunction laws in California until after the movie Colors. Do you all realize that? They have been making movies about mobsters, for white mobsters and white gangsters for decades. But it was only after Dennis Hopper's movie Colors that all of a sudden the black gangs in California became the biggest threat in the world after that. So there was no real world threat that you could use and hold them up as the example of what you're going to go after. So they made a movie and hired a rapper, Ice-T. And next thing you know, the black gangs are the biggest threat, and we need to make laws against them. We got to make laws against them. All of a sudden, after that, Tookie Williams became a household name. After that, everything was the Bloods and Crips. Forget about all the white gangs, the Irish gangs, the Jewish gangs. Forget about those. So even if they don't have a real enemy to go after, they will create one. They'll make one. They'll create it. That's just how far it goes. So when they see an opportunity, they're going to take advantage of it. And this is what happened in Nazi Germany. I'm going to roll it back a little bit here. But this is what happened in Nazi Germany.
From Germany. Among them were the parents of Herschel Goischepan. The 17-year-old was living in Paris at the time, and upon hearing about the treatment of his mother and father, he plotted revenge. On November 7th, 1938, he walked into the office of Ernst vom Rath, a Nazi German diplomat, and shot him twice in the stomach. Roth died 2 days later, and when word reached Berlin, leaders in the Nazi Party saw an opportunity to strike. In a fiery speech, Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels encouraged anti-Semitic demonstrations, and on the night of November 9th, 1938, Nazi mobs took to the streets. Rioters targeted Jewish homes, stores, schools, hospitals, and synagogues. Buildings were torched and windows smashed. German firemen and police were ordered to stand down.
Okay, now you've got imagery here of Nazis going down the street with torches in the middle of the night with torches, shouting their slogans, looking for non-Aryans to target, committing acts of violence. However, take a look up there now. Fifth step. The fifth step, legal and extra legal, is now allowed against you. So the legal government apparatus approved of an act of violence against them, and then put the machinery in place, and then told the police and the authorities, don't you interfere. You stand back. Don't you intervene. Yeah, it sounds like Charlottesville, doesn't it? But you know what? It also sounds like New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Sounds like all the Black Wall Streets. It sounds like Move in Philadelphia. It sounds like Move. It sounds like that. We have a long and storied history of this. But you know what else it sounds like? It sounds like every shooting of an unarmed black person. It sounds like that. It sounds like those. And yeah, that's what Charlottesville was supposed to be. It was supposed to be the kicking off. It was supposed to be the Kristallnacht of our time. And here we are. You thought this was all dead and gone after Nazi Germany, and then you realize, whoa, we're still chugging along. Only now, you're in the crosshairs.
The violence would carry over into another day, and by the time it was over, dozens of Jewish citizens were dead. hundreds of synagogues burned, and thousands of Jewish businesses destroyed. In the days that followed, the Nazis would blame the Jewish community for the damage done, instituting a fine exceeding $5 billion in today's money. Meanwhile, 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and deported to concentration camps, and the businesses that were destroyed were banned from ever reopening again.
That was in Nazi Germany. And it sounds very familiar. In Charlottesville, the white supremacists were going around targeting black people, trying to kill, if they could, and right now they are deporting us. I want you to understand, they are deporting black people today. They are deporting us from areas of poverty and desperation to areas of greater poverty and greater desperation. We are being deported within the territorial confines of the United States, which is why we don't recognize it. You're not being deported south of the border. You are being deported out of the city that you live in into the wilderness. As black people in Harlem, Philadelphia, Detroit, black people are being deported out of those cities. San Francisco, now less than 5% black, and the whole state of California is following suit. You are being deported out of these cities and out of these states. Don't look around to figure out where you're going to be deported to. They're not going to send you, quote, back to Africa. They don't have to. They're deporting you right here. They're sending you to the wilderness right here. They don't have to send you to foreign soil. They've deported you right where you are. They've deported you to the wilderness right where you are. This is why black people don't recognize it. Yes, deportation or gentrification is deportation. You are being deported from the city to the wilderness. Skid Row in Los Angeles has got more black folk than anything else. I have been to Skid Row several times. I've been up and down those dozens of blocks. I made the documentary about Skid Row and its racial ramifications, and I showed you black folk all over the place on Skid Row. Skid Row is where is majority black. In a city that's whittled down, its black population is single digits. And the majority of your black folk in jail, homeless, on the verge of being homeless. And so now they are deporting you within the confines of the United States. If you all remember, Neely Fuller, I believe, has a similar ideology about that. That he says the society is a prison and that all blacks are confined within this prison. And that when you are sent to jail or the penitentiary, that he doesn't call it jail or penitentiary, he calls that greater confinement. So you are already confined in the society at large. And if you get sent to prison or jail, you are simply now in greater confinement. You are already a legal alien in the United States. You're already a legal alien. They are now deporting the legal aliens and bringing in illegal aliens to replace you as the population, as the social mechanism, as the consumer base, as the consumer class. They are bringing them in to replace you. And you are being deported. Black people are being deported out of D.C. They're being deported out of Atlanta. They're being deported out of the entire state of New York. They are being deported out of the entire state of California. They are being deported out of the city of Chicago. Remember, in my documentary film Gentrified, and if you have not seen my film Gentrified, I went into depth about this, about how they are emptying out the cities in America. The cities are being emptied out. They're targeting black people and emptying the city of their black populations, so that you're going to have a population in the city 1/4 the size of what it is right now. Now it's going to have all of its wealth, all of the skyscrapers, all the highways, but none of the congestion. All they got to do is remove you. The population of the state of New York has been declining for the last 10 years. The population of the state of California has been declining for the last 7. The population of Chicago has been declining for the last 4 years. I posted the articles about this. And in places like Dallas, Texas, the black population is doing the same thing. Black people are being deported out of Dallas. I used to live there. Black folk are being deported out of Dallas. You're being deported out of D.C. You're being deported out of Los Angeles and the entire state of California. All of these cities, remember, we talked about Atlanta with its declining black population, and then Chicago. So Atlanta was supposed to be the black mecca of the South. Chicago was supposed to be the black mecca of the North outside of Harlem, and now you're going to have neither. Now you're going to have neither. So we are being deported. We are being removed. We are being ethnically cleansed. And we're waiting for them to show up with cattle cars and load us all up. Brothers and sisters, they don't have to do that. They have the most sophisticated form of ethnic cleansing that mankind has ever witnessed. They're doing it through a paperwork process. They are deporting and exterminating black people through a paperwork process. They have reduced our extermination at the hands of police, at the hands of vigilantes, and anybody else who wishes to kill us. They have reduced our extermination to a paperwork process. No, they don't have to load you all up in cattle cars. They will evict you 1,000 at a time every month and won't let any new ones in, and then we're done. Now, there's a misnomer for you there in the chat room. They talk about New York City, $2,000 a month studios. Have you been down to Florida? Have you seen how much studios and apartments are going for down in Florida? Have you seen what's going on in Fort Lauderdale? Have you seen what's going on in Miami, in Orlando, in Jacksonville? Jacksonville's supposed to be a black city. Have you seen what's going on in Jacksonville and Jacksonville Beach? Have you seen what's happening in Dallas, Texas, which is getting 1,000 people, or is it 10,000 people from California every month, I believe it is. 1,000 or 10, I want to say it's 10,000 people from California are moving to Texas every month. They can afford to leave California and set up somewhere else. And we're witnessing as the rents in Dallas are now up to $1,500 a month, and away we go. And away we go. You know, Boca Raton has always been the hood in Florida. Boca Raton has always been where impoverished Negroes go in California, and not California, Florida. Anybody who has been to northern Florida, you know that you see a marked difference between northern and central Florida, and then when you go down in that southern part of Florida. Boca Raton, Miami. I mean, Miami, there, a lot of parts of Miami look like the damn third world. Things that you don't see up in Orlando and Jacksonville Beach and Daytona Beach and Pensacola. You don't see a bunch of poor folks walking around those areas because the poor folk can't even get in. Can't even get in. And pretty soon, mark my words, pretty soon Boca Raton is going to be living the high life. Or that's where all your Negroes are going to be stockpiled at, is in Boca Raton. And they will be confined to those areas. Black people are being migrated to these areas. They're being migrated out of the cities. You help build the cities up as the working class in those areas, and now they are migrating you out. Now that you've built them up and made them viable, you're getting migrated out. They are legalizing anybody who wants to shoot a black person in the state of Florida. It's legal. You don't need a reason. You don't need a cause. All you got to do is make sure there were no witnesses, and the sheriff and the police will back you. The sheriffs and the police will back you. We are being deported. We are being ethnically cleansed, American style. I created my documentary work. I did these things because nobody else was talking about this. Nobody else would get up and do it. TV One refused to do the work that we do, which is why they are no longer the black media and we are. And I am telling you, at this point, you have to take this situation this seriously. We are at the 5th step to Nazi Germany. We are there now. They can murder us with impunity. They can move us en masse. They can ethnically cleanse us in whole populations at will. The political structure has made it all the written law. From the way we dress, to where we spend our money, to if we spend our money. We have been publicly declared as the enemy. Now the next question becomes, well, what do you do about it when you're standing on the 5th step to Nazi Germany? What do you do? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to wake the hell up. And in the words of Dr. John Henry Clark, you have to look at the black person next to you and realize that that is your best chance for survival. Black people have been trying to figure out how we can survive with the help of white society. Problem: the dominant society is the one that's put us in this position and is oppressing us. That's not going to be a way out. The way out begins with you and me and us and we acknowledging that this is the situation that we are in. Looking at the black person next to you and realizing that you have a debt of honor and an obligation to that person to do no evil. That's what we have to understand first and foremost, that brothers and sisters, when it all comes down to it, when the rubber meets the road, we're all we got. We're all we got. And that's the first step that we have to acknowledge as black people. We're all we got. It's just gonna be you and me. That's it. There is no, well, I'm gonna be the protected coon and the pet Negro. There is no pet Negro position. There is none. And the first step to getting out of the 5th step on Nazi Germany is to recognize the black people around you are all you got. And that every single one of us better get on code. Our survival depends upon it. The next step is realizing that they went after your economy because that is what they are most terrified of. They are most frightened of your economy because poor people will always be the easy targets of victimization of people who are not poor. So the first step to making yourself a hard target is to stop being a poor target. That's the first step to becoming a hard target. Don't be a poor one. Being poor makes you a hard target. And what do you do about that? Stop pretending that religion and fraternities and education for the sake of being a student and sports and video games are going to be your salvation, that integration is going to be the way out. Brothers and sisters, economic empowerment, that's what it's all about. The fact they go after us so hard every time that happens, that tells you that's the path to salvation, but it ain't gonna be easy. It ain't gonna be easy. It is not going to be easy to get there. That's what you have to understand. We want to take some easy way out. Let me just go to church and it'll be okay. Let me just type on Twitter and it'll be okay. Let me just get a non-black girlfriend, boyfriend, it'll be okay. No, it is not gonna be okay. You have to have your economy together, otherwise you are helpless. So first, you need to have a code of conduct that says we're all we got. Second of all, the code of conduct is bolstered by the economy. You have to have an economic code of conduct. So first, you have to have your personal code of conduct. Second, you have to have your economic code of conduct. And I don't give a damn if there's only one other black person who is not interested in being marched off to the concentration camps. You get with them. I don't care about your religious differences. I don't care about your skin color differences. I don't care about your ideological differences. If you both agree that you do not wish to be marched off into that dark night and exterminated, you better get together with each other and start building. Maybe you can't build a skyscraper, but maybe you can make some I-beams and some concrete, and you bring your I-beams and your concrete, and I'll bring my I-beams, my concrete, and somebody else bring the drywalls. And if we're building it, if we get the resources individually, we can come together as a group. And then you move on to the third step. Consider this the third step of black empowerment. The first step is getting a personal code of conduct. The second step is getting an economic code of conduct. And the third step is establishing a societal code of conduct that you execute. The third step is having a societal code of conduct and then execute it. The way that you deal with a white supremacist economy is by building a black empowerment economy. The way in which you deal with armed white supremacists is becoming an armed black empowerment specialist. The way you deal with people looking to make you an easy target is you become a deadly hard target. The way in which you deal with a white supremacist system is you build a black empowerment one. Those are the things that they're trying to prevent you from doing because those are the things that will stop them. And they're bringing over other people who are not black and helping them and giving them assistance in getting themselves solidified socially and financially. They're giving them help to get them solidified as quickly as possible because they want those people to stand in your way. Look at what they're giving them. They're giving them economic and social tools, but first economic. So that tells you where salvation is. And once we do that as a group, it'll be Nazi Germany facing the gas chambers. Not us. Understand that. Once we get on the same page, it will be Nazi Germany marched off to the gallows and sent off to the gas chambers, not us. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts that one day our great-great-great-grandchildren are going to look back at this era of history and the 500 years that preceded it and take a look at how weak and flimsy our opposition was, but how cowardly we were, and say, how in the hell did they ever keep you all enslaved for that long? How did they ever keep you oppressed for that long? It's not like they were that skilled or that good at what they were doing. How did they do that? And the answer is, it's easy to enslave somebody who's not fighting it. It's easy to do that. So that'll depend on all of us. That'll depend on all of us doing what we're supposed to be doing. Now, I know some of these things are scary. I know some of these things bother you. But 10 years ago, we didn't have this. 10 years ago, economics was not the primary agenda in black society. 10 years ago, education and getting a black president was the agenda. 10 years ago, John Lewis could trot out that old ragged, dusty speech about Edmund Pettus Bridge, and that was an applause line. Today, John Lewis don't want to talk about Edmund Pettus Bridge anymore. Barack Obama has gone into hiding. Bill Clinton right behind him. Bernie Sanders afraid to show his face, and Joe Biden is very meek right now. Why? Because the national discussion has changed. There's been a groundswell over the last 10 years. The national discussion has changed. We've seen the 5 steps to Nazi Germany. We're now going to give you the 4 steps to black empowerment. They are seeing us adopting an agenda. So now they're trying to stack up as much as they can, as quickly as they can, before we get solidified. But they're, brothers and sisters, they're not going to give it up easy. That's not the way that power works. Power is not given. Power is taken. They're not going to give you anything. You are going to have to take it. Everything that they have, you have to understand, the dominant society sees the murder of black people as the cost of doing business. They see the brutalization of black people and the murder of black people as a necessary, I can't even say that they consider it a necessary evil. They just consider it to be a necessary ritual. The systemic murder of black people with impunity to protect a white supremacist state, they just consider that to be a necessary ritual. It's just a necessary routine practice. It's got to be done. It's just got to be done. You're going to have to do this every once in a while. Every once in a while, you're going to have to do that. Some black folk are going to have to be killed. Some black folk are going to have to die for the purposes of maintaining white supremacy. They know this and they have accepted it. You're not going to be able to get them to stop by telling them that they're murdering you or killing you. They know what they are doing, and they accept your murder, death, suffering, and oppression as the price that they are willing to pay, the piece of their soul that they are willing to sacrifice in order to maintain what they've got. And so they'll get out in the streets and march sometimes. They might call up to a talk show and protest white supremacy every once in a while, but the concrete steps that need to be taken to dismantle white supremacy, they will not do it. They want to tell themselves, well, I know I'm not that bad. But when you ask them, okay, here's what you need to do, all of a sudden they get real quiet on you. They back off. All of a sudden you're standing by yourself. All of a sudden they tell you, well, the real issue, illegals are suffering too and gays are suffering too. It's not just black people. It's not just black people. So they acknowledge that you are specifically targeted and that you are a special targeted people. And then they turn around and tell you, yeah, but that don't mean nothing. We can't do something just for you, even though you are the only one being targeted. So what that means, brothers and sisters, is you cannot ask, you cannot beg, you cannot plead. You are going to have to take it. It is not going to be given to you. You will have to take it. Survival is power. They are against your survival. You're going to have to take it. If you're going to have it, you will have to take it. And you take it by first realizing we're all we got. Have a personal code. That personal code needs to be manifest physically. That's economics. The economics are a result of your personal code. Third, you're going to take it out into the society at large and get with other black folk who understand. And then fourth, we're going to execute it. I began the Black Channel over a decade ago because I wanted to create a repository for intelligent black thought, the black folk who are not still trying to figure it out, the black people who understand that economics is the answer, the black folk who are not still arguing over it. I wanted to create a safe space where we could discuss these things, where you didn't feel like you were crazy and didn't feel like you are alone. 10 years later, the clergy has backed down. The old black media is dead. The white political establishment is on the run. The politicians are adopting our vocabulary and trying to bastardize it and will not be able to succeed in doing so. We are now setting the agenda. We are now setting the template. We are now setting the terms of the discussion. And that was something that was not happening 10 years ago. It's happening today. And it's happening today because of all of you. It's happening today because of all of you. But we cannot stop now. We have to keep on it. We can't back down and we can't stop now. We have to keep going. This is not the beginning of the end. It is merely the end of the beginning. We've got a long way to go. Jason, how long will it take? How do we know when we've won? How do we know when we've won? Brothers and sisters, I can answer that very simply for you. We will know that we have won when we ask people, can you tell me about white supremacy? And they say, what's that? All I know about is black empowerment. When you start hearing that, now you know you're winning. Now you know you've won. I don't want us to ever forget how we got into this. But when black empowerment becomes as common as shoes and eyelashes, that's when we've won. And then after that, now that you've won the war, you must now win the peace. I started this journey a decade ago, and I'm glad to have all of you with us who have been here the whole time, or those of you who have been here new. Thank you for your support. I will be eternally grateful. I am eternally humbled. And it has been my honor to serve as the messenger. Now, let's take the message even further. We're not done. As a matter of fact, we haven't even gotten started. If you have not been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com. That's blackchannelfilms.com. Check out our documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Ethnic Cleansing American Style, and our new documentary, Race War. Now on sale on Amazon. All the films are available for streaming. Everybody can go and see that for yourselves. It's time to get up to speed. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the BlackChannel.net radio program. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, eat this, drink this, sleep this, think this, breathe this, feel this, live this, love this, everything that we are, Black first.